Hi everyone, what's up? Today I'm sharing with you my new favorite pour over kettle, the Artisan Barista Smart Electric Kettle. It has a full 1 litre capacity with a minimum fill of 200 milliliters, which is great for coffee brewing and in the kitchen. It's smart because it has intuitive controls, from a cold to fast boil function or specific temperature control from 57 degrees Celsius to boiling, as well as a hold feature which will maintain any of your set temperatures. It's well powered with a range of 1500 to 1800 watts, so it also boils really fast in under 4 minutes, and it's the only smart kettle I know to do so. And if you're interested in seeing how this kettle compares against all other electric gooseneck kettles, then you can find our video from the link up above and down below in the description. Now, if you've already got a gooseneck kettle, one that works, then this video might not interest you, unless getting a little bit nerdy, testing how flow rates affect the flavor of your brewed coffee does. And if you are looking for a new kettle or wanting to upgrade from a current one to get better consistency with your pour over brewing, then hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around as that's what we're going to get into. Now, the Artisan Barista does look very much like the popular Fellow Stag EKG and performs just as good in my opinion, if not better. The EKG, beloved for many reasons, one being its controlled and really slow pour rate. The Artisan Barista just takes this to the next level and is half the price of the Fellow EKG. And in fact, it really sits on both sides of the fence for flow rates. See, it comes with flow restrictors. Now, you place these on the inside of the spout to slow the flow rate. And without it, you get a 35 to 38 millisecond flow rate, which is on the slow side of an average flow rate for gooseneck kettles. But this, being unrestricted, is already twice as fast as the flow rate you get with the Stag EKG. Then go ahead and place a restrictor in the kettle, and there are two size restrictors you get with it, and then it slows the pours down to 19 mils and 9 mils respectively, which is crazy slow. Now, I've incidentally left one of these in the kettle when I've gone to brew some tea with it, and I've lost my mind trying to fill that pot up. But for brewing pour over coffee, these are a game changer. So it is known that pour over coffee is best brewed using a slow controlled flow rate of water. And it's in the velocity of the water coming out of the kettle and the height at which you pour from that adds turbulence inside your brewer of choice. And turbulence in general is not a bad thing, but too much of it is, as it stirs up the bed of coffee and then breaks up the consistency to the depth of it, throwing grounds high and dry that stick to the paper filter and also creating channels for water to flow through faster. Now, a faster pour will also add more water to the brewer in a short amount of time. And two things could go wrong here. One, you could increase the head of water above the ground coffee, and then by way of gravity, this will push down through the bed and speed up your brew times. It's not undesirable, but best to be aware of. And in that same scenario, for the ideal temperature stability, well, your water's going to keep hotter in the kettle than it will inside your brewer. And the second issue with adding in water too quickly is actually the reverse. It can create either an airlock, or with fines migration, your water will just stall and then stop dripping through the brewer altogether. And many of these issues do sound like they can be resolved by changing the grind size alone, but in doing so, you might find yourself, and I'm guilty of this, going around in circles and adding to your dilemmas. Whereas slowing down the pour and your flow rate can allow you to grind finer and even drop your dose to get more extraction and flavor from your coffee whilst avoiding over extraction. And the slower a kettle can pour, the easier it is to control the pour. So perhaps the same goes for the flow of water onto the bed of coffee as one more parameter to manage the rate of extraction. And whilst predominantly this has been me telling you why I like this kettle so much and I've adopted it as my go-to kettle for pour over coffee, I am really curious to see how that advantage of restricted pours plays out in the real world and what is the flavor difference between different flow rates. So we're going to test that today. And I have been following, I guess you would call it a paradigm shift in espresso brewing, where measuring and managing flow rates through the bed of coffee has become necessary in the finer details of an espresso extraction. Now, with pour overs, base level knowledge would have to be brew ratios, and then perhaps temperature control of your water and your brewers. Then that extends out to different filter papers and then different recipes. And this eventually includes multiple pours within a recipe, and this leads to different flow rates in those pours. And in fact, Akai scales, which are a great manufacturer of scales, they've already anticipated this attention to flow rates and have added this feature into all their new scales, and this allows you to visually see the flow rate. So I come back to, why is the Artisan Barista Smart Electric Kettle a great kettle to have? Well, it has 3 flow rates to choose from: 38, 19, and 9 mils a second. And 9 mils isn't much good for anything else but brewing coffee. But this is a gooseneck kettle for coffee brewing, is it not? And when I say 38, 19, and 9 mils a second, they're just the maximum flow rates, and it's not restricted to those alone, and you can certainly achieve any flow rate under those maximums. Now, the lid on the Artisan Barista Kettle, it's seated with a silicone seal, and it's an excellent tight fit. It's not waterproof, as no one in their right mind would turn a kettle upside down with boiling water inside it. However, you can get this kettle pretty well horizontal even when full and not have water coming out of the lid. Another great feature about the Artisan Barista Kettle, and the Time War kettle is another good example of this, is the holes on top of the kettle for steam and pressure to escape out of. It's fixed on the body of the kettle and not on the lid, so you don't find yourself halfway through pouring, realizing you've added the lid onto the kettle and now incidentally aimed the steam right at your hand. And in making this video, I was concerned about the existing hydrostatic pressures inside the kettle. That is the amount of water that remains inside the kettle as you pour it out, and then this water will exert pressure and influence a nice steady laminar flow from the spout. And then, is it really 9 mils a second flow rate, or is there more velocity to that flow at the greater angle that I tilt the kettle with more water left in it? And of course, this will all change with the associated flow rates of varying temperatures of water. And then I was like, I just need to make and taste some coffee. I do recommend though that you place only as much water as you need to brew, plus let's say 15 or 20% more in the kettle, as it will save energy heating it and further assist in controlling the flow. Although technically, you might also benefit from having a consistent amount of water there in the kettle each time. I don't really know about that one. Perhaps you can add your comments and thoughts in the comment section down below and we'll get some confirmation on that. For now, I'll set up this brewing area and we'll get tasting. Now, with all things being equal, I have the same amount of water in each kettle and I've heated them to 95 degrees Celsius, and I'm going to be using the same grind and the same brew ratio between these two coffees. So literally the only thing that is going to be different is the flow rates in which I pour them with. The black kettle has a 9 mil restrictor in it and the white kettle has a 19 mil restrictor in it. So I guess I will be getting to those maximum flow rates throughout the pour. I won't be doing a bloom, I'll just be doing a straight pour and pouring around in circles. That'll be the best way I can keep the consistency there. And it's the same brew ratio as I mentioned, so 15 gram dose to a 250 gram water yield. Let's see how we go. Kettle's just heating up again, hitting the band. Cool, all right. Now, this is really cool. Having two kettles both presenting very consistent flow rates. So I don't have to worry too much about the exact flow rate because I know exactly this is 19 mils on my right and 9 mils on my left. And the potential for this kettle to be a competition kettle is huge. Now I finished pouring that in 30 seconds and this one's still going. Oops, still a bit more. All right, 10 seconds behind it. Now the potential for these kettles to be competition kettles is huge because you've restricted the flow so that way you can maximize your recipe to the flow that you'll be using, and then that way you almost don't need to worry about how you're tilting the kettle or the flow rate at all because you know it's consistent. Well, I find this interesting. The amount of water I placed into the filter kept consistent to the drawdown of the times, whereas I finished this one 10 seconds before this one, and then this drawdown was only 15 seconds faster than this one. So they were fairly consistent between the flow rates coming into the bed and the flow rates out of the bed. And that certainly has a lot to do with the grind size as well. And it's really interesting to see how the beds of coffees have been affected by the flow rate of the kettles. On the one hand, you've got that 19 mils a second fast flow, and it's just taken like almost 50% of the grinds up the sides of the filters. So you've got only 50% down the bottom where the water would be penetrating through, and you're probably missing a lot of coffee extraction out of that. Whereas on the slow flow, you can see there's plenty more. There's like 70 to 80% more grounds sitting in the bottom of the filter. So you should have a lot more penetration of water through a lot more ground coffee and getting more extraction out of that. We'll just have to let these coffees cool down and see what they taste like. All right, so I've got a white dot on the bottom of this one. And the white dot is for the white kettle and the fast flow. 60 mils, I'm just gonna place 60 mils in each so it's quite level. Beautiful. Blind tasting time. Here we go. Let's go. Tasting brewed coffee. This is a first. I've never done this one before. A little nervous. I'm just gonna taste the coffee and tell you, I guess, my experiences, my taste experiences with it before I kind of try and pick out the flow rates. I've never done this before, so I don't really know what to expect other than seeing the bed of coffee out of the fast flow versus the slow flow, or 9 mils a second. You know, I have understanding of, because the ground coffee was high in the baskets, that it might affect the extraction a little bit, but we don't know. We don't really know. Let's just taste the coffee and see. Start with this one. Some sweetness in it, not a lot of sweetness, but there's a little bit and it's lingering. So you would have thought there was more body to this coffee, but there really isn't a lot of body, but there's a lot of sweetness in this. Yeah, it's real jammy. There's like a peach note to it as well that's kind of getting trapped in the cheeks. It's really delicious. Yeah, there's no like, it's a bit thin. There's not like a lot of acidity, but there's some there, and it's quite, it's muted. I wouldn't say it's balanced or there's a lot of it, but it's there. But it's nice and lingering, and there's no real negative flavors to this coffee that I would say. Yeah, like I'm not spitting it out. I could happily drink this coffee. This is really nice. Let's try this one now. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really sweet. There's a whole lot more sweetness than this one is, for sure. Like, it's just more peachy. Like, this was one peach, and this is like, I don't know, 4 or 5 peaches in it. It's like there's a lot more richness in this coffee. It's much smoother, although this wasn't terribly unsmooth. But I feel like the lingering, like it's all just jammy and smooth and sweet, full-bodied. Yeah, if I said I could drink this one all day, then I'll be going for seconds on this one. This is amazing. Yeah, I guess a hint more acidity if I was to like describe the differences between the acidities as well. There's a lot more green apple acidity in this. It's just kind of more everything, more characteristics, less characteristics. Yeah, interesting. Oh, like if I was to guess, because just based on my thoughts of the extraction of the beds of coffees and the flow rates and so forth, I would say that this is the fast pour. It's good, it's okay. It's you know, it's a nice coffee, but perhaps the coffee could be better. And this would be the slow pour. There's just more to it, more extraction to the coffee, more flavor, balanced in a way that this doesn't have anything really to balance in it. It's just kind of, it's sweet. All right, let's check. Drum roll. I need a drum roll for these things. White and black. Woo! White, black. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, or not so, I guess. If you have a look at the beds of coffees, like Like there was much less coffee in this bed with the fast flow rate. So perhaps that was all it was at the end of the day. And you certainly do want to lower the flow rates of your coffee when you're pouring. 19 mils is quite a lot. And of course, brewing coffee using 19 mils or even 9 mils a second are not ideal flow rates for brewing filter coffee. 9 mils is on the upper end of flow rates. It's more around like the 4 to 7 mils a second maintained that you want to achieve in your kettle. But as I mentioned, having a slower pouring kettle certainly helps you pour slowly. And I'm imagining one day, honestly, seeing a kettle where you can adjust the flow rate live during brewing. And this, of course, is going to take away and undermine one skill of brewing great pour over coffee as a barista. But the Artisan Barista Smart Electric Kettle does offer that glimpse of what more you can achieve with a kettle for coffee brewing. So certainly this will be becoming my kettle of choice. So thanks for watching to the end of this video, and we'll see you in the next one.